The weight of Crown's Princess Vera Nethys stood at the crystalline windows of her chambers, watching the twin suns of Zithari Prime cast their violet light across the capital city. 3 years had passed since the Terran-Zithari War ended, and 2 since her marriage to Captain Marcus Thorne had sealed the peace between their species. The ceremony had been magnificent effusion of human and Zithari, traditions that symbolized hope for both civilizations. The Zithari were a proud race, their silver skin bearing intricate bioluminescent patterns that reflected their emotional states. Unlike humans, they prized emotional discipline above all else, viewing excessive displays of feeling as weakness. Vera had been raised to embody this ideal, her patterns remaining steady and controlled, even during the most challenging diplomatic negotiations. Marcus had been different from other humans she'd encountered during the war, where others were. Brash and emotional, he possessed a quiet strength that reminded her of her own people. His dark eyes held depths that spoke of understanding, and his respectful approach to Zithari customs had impressed even the most skeptical members of the High Council. Their courtship had been formal, at first carefully orchestrated meetings. In the presence of advisors, exchanges of cultural gifts, and lengthy discussions about the future of their united peoples. But gradually, something genuine had grown between them. Marcus learned to read the subtle shifts in her bioluminescent patterns, while she came to appreciate the warmth of human emotion when properly channeled. The wedding had taken place in the grand amphitheater of convergence, witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy. Vera had worn the traditional silver circlet of her house, while Marcus donned the ceremonial blue uniform of the Terran fleet. When they joined hands during the sacred binding, her patterns had glowed with a soft gold that even the most stoic Zithari elders couldn't help but admire. For the first year, their marriage had been everything the treaty makers had hoped for. They appeared together at state functions, their obvious respect for each other serving as a powerful symbol of interspecies cooperation. Marcus had even begun learning the ancient Zithari combat forms, while Vera had taken to studying human military history. But now, as she touched the marriage band that encircled her wrist, a living metal that would dim only upon death or formal dissolution, doubt crept through her mind like poison. The man she had learned to trust, perhaps even love in her own restrained way, had become a stranger. His once open demeanor had grown guarded, his explanations for his absences increasingly vague. Tonight, she would confront him. Tonight, she would demand the truth that her heart both longed for and dreaded to hear. The palace bells chimed the evening hour, and Vera steeled herself for what was to come. Cracks in the foundation, the state dinner proceeded with typical Zithari precision. Each course served at exact intervals, while dignitaries from both species engaged in carefully neutral conversation. Vera sat beside Marcus at the high table, her patterns maintaining the steady blue-white of diplomatic neutrality despite the storm brewing within her heart. She had been watching him for weeks now, cataloging every suspicious behavior with his analytical mind that had made her an effective negotiator. The encrypted communications that arrived at odd hours, always transmitted through channels she didn't recognize. The way he would excuse himself during important meetings, claiming urgent military briefings that never appeared on any official schedule. Most troubling of all, the gradual emotional distance that had grown between them like a chasm. "You seem distracted tonight," Marcus murmured, his voice carrying the familiar warmth that had once comforted her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion. In his eyes, the weight of whatever secrets he carried. "Merely observing," she replied, her tone perfectly modulated. "It's a skill my people value highly." Something flickered across his features, guilt, perhaps, or recognition of the subtle warning in her words. He reached for her hand, and she allowed the contact while carefully controlling her bioluminescent response. Once, his touch would have sent cascades of warm gold across her skin. Now, She maintained the cold silver of emotional restraint. After the meal, they retired to their private chambers in the palace's residential wing. The rooms had been redesigned to accommodate both their culture's human furniture, arranged alongside Zethari meditation crystals, holographic displays showing both Earth's blue oceans and Zethari Prime's violet landscapes. The Terran ambassador seemed pleased with the trade negotiations, Marcus said, settling into his chair with practiced casualness. But Vera had learned to read human body language as well as he had learned to interpret her patterns. The tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes avoided hers, all signs of deception. Ambassador Kellern mentioned something interesting, she said, moving to her meditation alcove where she could observe him clearly. He spoke of increased Terran fleet, activity in the outer systems, military exercises, he claimed, though he seemed remarkably uninformed about their nature. Marcus's hand stilled on the datapad he'd been reaching for. Fleet movements are classified. You know that. I know many things, Marcus, including the fact that my husband has been lying to me for months. The words hung in the air between them. Like a blade, Marcus rose slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to something that might have been relief. Vera, I know. Her patterns flared bright white, the Zethari equivalent of raised voices. I have been patient. I have been understanding. I have honored our bond while you have made a mockery of it. Tonight you will tell me the truth, or I will invoke the right of dissolution. The threat clearly shook him. The right of dissolution was ancient, sacred, and irreversible. Once invoked, no power in the galaxy could restore their marriage bond. You don't understand the complexity of the situation, he said, his voice strained. There are forces at work, forces that require you to deceive your wife. Marcus closed his eyes, and for a moment she saw the man she had married, vulnerable, conflicted, but fundamentally honorable. When he looked at her again, his expression was resolute. There are things I cannot tell you. Not yet, but I swear to you, Vera, everything I've done has been to protect our people. Both our people. Her patterns dimmed to the deep purple of profound disappointment. Then you have already chosen your path, husband, and I must choose mine. The ancient rite, the Chamber of Echoes, had not seen use in over 3 centuries. Deep beneath the palace, carved from the living rock of Zethari Prime itself, it was here that the most sacred rituals of her people were performed. The walls pulsed, with their own bioluminescent patterns, responding to the emotional state of any Zethari who entered. Vera knelt before the altar of binding, where her marriage band would be severed if she chose to proceed with the rite of dissolution. The ceremony required 3 days of meditation and purification, during which she would examine every aspect of her marriage and her motivations for ending it. Only then, if her resolve remained unchanged, would the ancient ritual be completed. High, Counselor Zephrix stood vigil beside her, his own patterns dim with concern. He had been her mentor since childhood, guiding her through the complexities of royal duty and diplomatic necessity. Child, he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, are you certain this is the path you wish to walk? The rite, once completed, cannot be undone. I am certain that I cannot continue living a lie, Vera replied, her pattern steady despite the turmoil in her heart. If Marcus cannot trust me with the truth, then our marriage is already dissolved and all but. Name. She had spent the first day in traditional meditation, allowing her mind to traverse the memories of her relationship with Marcus. The early days of their courtship, when every gesture had been calculated but genuine. Their wedding day, when she had felt, perhaps for the first time, the warm glow of something approaching love. The quiet moments they had shared, reading together in their chambers or walking through the palace gardens. But those memories were poisoned, now by the knowledge of his deception. Every tender moment became suspect, every shared confidence as potential manipulation. Had their entire relationship been nothing more than an elaborate charade designed to serve Terran interests? On the second day, she had been visited by her brother, Prince Valorian, whose patterns blazed with righteous anger. "The humans have always been treacherous," he declared, his silver skin crackling with red lightning. "This merely proves what many of us suspected from the beginning." "Do not speak of matters you don't understand," Vera warned, though her own doubts echoed his words. "Then help me understand, sister. What possible justification could there be for his behavior? What truth could be so terrible that it requires lies to protect it?" She had no answer for him, and that silence spoke volumes. Now, on the third day, she prepared for the final phase of the ritual, the sundering, where the marriage bond would be broken forever. The ceremony would be witnessed by the High Council and transmitted across both human and Zithari space, marking the end of the symbolic union that had guaranteed peace. But as she reached for the ceremonial blade that would sever her marriage band, the chamber doors burst open. Marcus stood there, flanked by 2 Terran guards, his uniform disheveled, and his face drawn with exhaustion. "Vera, please," he gasped, having clearly run through the labyrinthine passages to reach her. "Before you do this, there's something you must know. Something that changes everything." High Counselor Zephrix stepped forward, his patterns blazing with offense. "This is a sacred space, human. You have no right. I have every right to speak to my wife before she destroys our marriage based on incomplete information." Marcus shot back, his eyes never leaving Vera's face. She studied him carefully, noting the genuine desperation in his expression. This was not the controlled deception she had witnessed before, but raw, unguarded emotion. "Speak quickly," she said, the ceremonial blade still poised above her marriage band. Marcus took a shuddering breath. "The operation you discovered? It's real, but it's not what you think. I haven't been working to control the Zithari. I've been working to stop those who would." The terrible truth Marcus's words echoed in the sacred chamber as Vera lowered the ceremonial blade, her patterns shifting to the deep indigo of profound confusion. High Counselor Zephrix's own bioluminescence flickered with uncertainty, while the chamber walls themselves seemed to pulse with the weight of revelation. "Explain," Vera commanded, her voice carrying the authority of her royal bloodline. "Explain quickly, and let there be no more lies between us." Marcus stepped forward, his guards remaining at the chamber entrance. 6 months ago, I was approached by Director Hartwell of Terran Intelligence. He informed me of a covert operation called Project Synthesis, a plan to place sleeper agents within Zithari society, using our marriage as a cover for intelligence gathering. The words hit Vera like physical blows. Her patterns flared bright red, the color of betrayal and rage. "You were part of this from the beginning?" "No." Marcus's denial rang through the chamber. "I was horrified. I refused to participate, but Hartwell made it clear that my refusal wouldn't stop the operation. They would simply find another way, perhaps one that would endanger you directly." High Counselor Zephrix's patterns had shifted to the cold white of deadly focus. "Continue, human. Choose your words carefully." Marcus nodded grimly. "I realized that the only way to protect both our peoples was to appear to cooperate while actually working to sabotage the operation from within. Every meeting I attended, every encrypted message I sent, was designed to feed false information to the conspirators while gathering evidence of their true intentions." Evidence? Vera's patterns began to shift, the red fading to curious amber. "The operation goes far beyond simple espionage. Hartwell's faction believes that humanity's survival depends on controlling the Zithari, using our superior numbers and industrial capacity to gradually subjugate your people. They plan to use our marriage as a symbol of supposed equality, while systematically undermining Zithari sovereignty." The implications were staggering. Vera felt the weight of not just her personal betrayal, but the potential betrayal of her entire species. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed you to react naturally to my apparent deception. If you had known the truth, your patterns would have betrayed that knowledge to any Zithari who could read them. The operation had to believe they were succeeding." Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew a small data crystal. "This contains every communication, every meeting record, every piece of evidence I've gathered over the past 6 months. It's enough to expose the conspiracy and prove that significant elements within the Terran government have been acting against the spirit of our alliance." Vera accepted the crystal, her patterns now shifting to deep purple, the color of profound contemplation. "And the price of this deception?" "The price was watching the woman I love lose faith in me, day by day, knowing that I couldn't explain without potentially destroying everything we've both worked to build." His voice cracked with emotion. "I would have told you everything after tonight's mission. The operation was set to reach its final phase, the activation of the sleeper agents. But instead, I chose to come here to you, even knowing it might compromise everything." High Counselor Zephrix studied the data crystal with instruments built into his ceremonial robes. After long moments, his patterns shifted to the gold of confirmation. "The information appears genuine, Princess. The encryption signatures match known Terran intelligence protocols. There's more," Marcus continued, his voice urgent. "Tonight, Director Hartwell's agents are moving to implement the final phase of their plan. They believe they have my cooperation, but I've been feeding them false intelligence. However, without my continued participation, they may resort to more direct methods." "Direct methods?" Vera's patterns flared with alarm. "Assassination attempts against key Zithari leaders, including members of the High Council. It would blame it on radical human factions, using the chaos to justify a more aggressive Terran presence in Zithari space." The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the bioluminescent walls. Vera felt the weight of decision pressing down upon her. Every instinct told her to trust Marcus, to believe in the man she had married. But she had been deceived before, and the stakes were too high for sentiment. "Zephrix," she said finally, "summon the High Council. All of them. We have work to do." As the High Counselor activated his communication device, Vera turned back to Marcus. "If you are lying to me now, if this is some elaborate manipulation, I will personally ensure that you face justice under both human and Zithari law." "I understand," Marcus replied, his expression grave. "But Vera, if we're going to stop this, we need to act tonight, together." The ceremonial blade lay forgotten on the altar as Princess Vera Nethys prepared to fight for the future of 2 species. The price of truth. The emergency session of the High Council convened within the hour, the circular chamber blazing with the intense patterns of 24 Zithari leaders in various states of alarm and outrage. Vera stood at the center, Marcus beside her, as she presented the evidence of the conspiracy. "The humans seek to make us slaves in our own star systems," declared Counselor Thyax, her patterns crackling with violent red. "This proves that the peace was nothing but elaborate deception." "Not all humans," Vera corrected, her voice carrying absolute authority. "A faction within their government, acting without official sanction. The distinction is crucial." High Counselor Zephrix had spent the past hour analyzing the data crystal with the Council's most advanced systems. "The evidence is compelling," he announced, his patterns steady with certainty. "The operation known as Project Synthesis represents a clear violation of the Terran Zithari Accords. However, it appears that Captain Thorne has been working to expose and prevent its implementation." Marcus stepped forward, his stance respectful but confident. "Honored counselors, I request permission to continue my role in the operation. Director Hartwell believes I'm preparing to activate the sleeper agents tonight. Instead, I propose we use this opportunity to expose the conspiracy publicly and capture the conspirators. You ask us to trust you after months of deception? Counselor. Thiax's patterns flared with skepticism. I ask you to trust the evidence and to trust your princess, who has seen through to the truth despite the personal cost. Marcus's gaze found Vera's. I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't risk the safety of both our peoples for the sake of our marriage. Vera felt the weight of the moment settling around her. The decision she made now would affect not just her personal future, but the destiny of countless lives across 2 star systems. The plan has merit, she said finally, but I propose modifications. Over the next hour, they refined their strategy. Marcus would return to the operation, apparently, proceeding with the activation protocol. However, instead of real sleeper agents, they would use volunteers from Zethari intelligence, who would feed false information back to the conspirators. Meanwhile, Vera would secretly contact loyal elements within the Terran government, providing them with evidence of the conspiracy. The plan required perfect timing and absolute trust. One mistake, and the fragile peace between their species could shatter forever. As the council session concluded, Vera found herself alone with Marcus in the chamber's antechamber. The ceremonial blade from the rite of dissolution lay on a nearby table, a reminder of how close they had come to destroying everything. I should have trusted you, she said quietly, her patterns dim with regret. You should have been told the truth, Marcus replied. I made choices based on logic and necessity, but I forgot that our marriage was built on more than political convenience. I forgot that you deserve better than my protection at the cost of your trust. Vera reached for her marriage band, feeling its warm pulse against her skin. When this is over, we'll need to rebuild what we've lost. Trust isn't easily restored, even between those who love each other. I know, Marcus said, his voice heavy with emotion. I'll spend whatever time you'll give me proving that our marriage is worth saving. The operation unfolded exactly as planned. Director Hartwell's conspiracy was exposed in spectacular fashion, with evidence broadcast simultaneously across both human and Zethari networks. The sleeper agents were captured, the assassination plots thwarted, and the conspirators brought to justice under the authority of both governments. But the victory came at a cost. The revelation of the conspiracy sparked riots on several human worlds where extremist factions claimed the evidence was fabricated. Some Zethari called for the complete severance of relations with humanity, arguing that the conspiracy proved humans could never be trusted. Through it all, Vera and Marcus worked together to maintain the peace their marriage had originally symbolized. They appeared before joint sessions of both governments, their restored unity serving as proof that the alliance between their species could survive even the worst. Betrayals. 6 months later, Vera stood again at the crystalline windows of her chambers, watching the twin suns set over Zethari Prime. Marcus joined her, as he had every evening since the crisis ended. Any regrets? He asked, his arms settling around her shoulders. About stopping the conspiracy? Never. She leaned into his embrace, her patterns warm with contentment. About nearly ending our marriage? Every day. We survived, Marcus said simply. Both our marriage and our people's alliance. That's what matters. Vera touched her marriage band, feeling its steady pulse. The bond between them had been tested by deception and nearly destroyed by duty, but it had emerged stronger than before. Sometimes, she reflected, the most precious things were those you almost lost. Together, they watched the stars emerge in the violet sky, 2 beings from different worlds who had learned that love, like peace, was worth fighting for.